Friday, 4:57 p.m. I knew something was rotting the second I saw Linda from HR waddling toward my cube, clutching a manila envelope like it held the nuclear codes. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine, which was funny, considering she once cornered me at the holiday party to drunkenly pitch her Christian astrology podcast. The new COO, Bryce with a Y, sat 3 desks away, typing something smug into his phone with his $600 loafers kicked up like he'd already saved the company. He didn't even flinch when she said my name. "Can we chat real quick?" Not even a warning shot. We shuffle into a glass fishbowl of a meeting room while the Friday exodus stampedes around us. She hands me the envelope like it's a baby bird. "Greystone's going through a strategic transformation." Oh, good. One of those. Leadership's making some tough optics-driven decisions to refocus the brand's forward trajectory. I half expected confetti to shoot out her ears from the effort of cramming that many meaningless syllables into one sentence. My ears heard "you're fired." My spine heard "apology" with paperwork. I didn't argue, didn't even blink. Just nodded, signed whatever clearance form they were panting about, and stood up. 6 years. 6 years of midnight restarts, holiday outages, patch notes, and silent weekends monitoring the heartbeat of servers that nobody even knew existed. And now Bryce, with his buzzwords and Bodox confidence, decided I was not aligned with the new vision. No thank you. No severance that wasn't standard. Just a timed execution before the clock hit 5 o'clock. By the way, this is where I pause for one tiny human moment. If you're hearing this and haven't hit subscribe, do me a favor and fix that. Seriously, 97% of folks just listen without subscribing. Meanwhile, my career got iced by a guy who thinks VPN is a type of energy drink. Hit the button. It feeds our caffeine addiction. And revenge tastes better funded. Anyway, I packed my things, which took all of 90 seconds. A cactus I'd named Bill because it survived neglect like a champ, one travel mug, a flash drive shaped like a chicken wing, and a faded hoodie that said I void warranties. I paused at my chair, turned slightly toward the server room. You couldn't hear it unless you'd lived inside it, the low, symphonic hum of enterprise infrastructure. She was still breathing, still alive. I whispered goodbye, which felt dumber than I'd like to admit, and walked back to my terminal. My monitor glowed soft and white. My fingers moved with a grace I hadn't felt in months, muscle memory from old war days. I didn't slam keys, didn't type angry. I ran one command. Just one looked like maintenance to anyone glancing over my shoulder. But inside that line was a key, a timer, a whisper, a self-deleting ghost, nothing flashy, no grand gestures, just an ending. Already written. I logged off. I stood up. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, Bryce high-fived someone across the hall. Swear to God, high-fived, like he'd just scored the game-winning touchdown. Like he didn't just amputate his own damn leg and call it a diet. Let him cheer. The system had already started forgetting him. It just didn't know it yet. 2019 was the year the company bled out quietly. While the rest of the world was hoarding toilet paper and perfecting sourdough starters, Greystone Capital was decapitating departments with surgical precision. First went the junior sysadmins, Kev, Maria, weird dude with the iguana who only spoke in gaming metaphors. Then middle management vanished in a PowerPoint purge, so brutal it left the finance floor echoing. By August, I was the last one standing in infrastructure. Me, a busted office chair, and 47 terabytes of corporate memory, limping along like an elderly racehorse. No one told me I was in charge. They just stopped showing up. One morning I asked who was taking over failover routing, and the CFO blinked at me like I'd asked him to breastfeed a server. So I learned to smile, nod, and say I've got it handled. Because I did. Because no one else could. There was no documentation, no cross-training, no handoffs. Every system was a Rube Goldberg nightmare of patched legacy garbage, duct-taped to half-baked cloud platforms some intern pitched in 2017. I once found a payroll subroutine running off a spreadsheet named Do Not Touch Final V7 Backup Copy Real XLS. I stayed late. I came in on Sundays. I stopped dating. Hell, I stopped talking. I became the shadow in the walls. When the sales team's VPN puked during a conference in Vegas, I was the one who SSH'd in from my bathroom floor with a stomach bug and no pants. When the CRM crashed mid-quarter, I was the one who rewrote the schema while drinking flat Mountain Dew and listening to raccoons fight outside my window. Then came the breach. It was a Tuesday, and I remember because my lunch exploded in the breakroom microwave while the firewall alarms lit up like Christmas. Some junior dev had hard-coded a default password into the dev branch, password 123, because of course. A botnet got in, scraped partial customer data, and sent the board into full Chernobyl mode. I spent 72 straight hours sealing the leak, rebuilding containers, rotating keys, and convincing legal that no, we didn't need to hire a guy named Crypto Dan off Twitter to handle public relations. That breach made one thing clear. I couldn't trust anyone, so I designed the new system with exactly one rule: if I didn't lock it, someone else would break it. I implemented a protocol. Two-factor everything. Passwords stored once, in a zero-knowledge encrypted email client, tied to a rotating key pair and an ephemeral inbox that even I couldn't access after a 72-hour TTL. Redundancy? Sure, but my kind, my rules. Because they wouldn't protect me when things went sideways, and they damn sure wouldn't protect themselves. Fast forward to now. They gutted the team, let the systems calcify under shiny dashboards and clueless middle managers, and acted like I was the dead weight. As I walked out that day, Friday, 5:03 p.m., the air outside hit me like static. Nobody noticed. No one waved. I was just a flicker, a glitch, a disposable plug-in they'd quietly offloaded. 6 years of late nights, crisis calls, patched kernels, and silent wins, and the security guard barely looked up from his phone. Let them forget. The system wouldn't. I sat in a cracked vinyl booth at Lou's 24-hour diner, the kind of place where the ketchup bottles are always sticky, and the waitresses call you Han whether you look suicidal or homicidal. My coffee tasted like regret filtered through a gym sock, and I loved it for that. Across from me sat my backpack, propped like a nervous companion, guarding a laptop that hadn't seen light since 2020 and still bore the property of Greystone Capital sticker, faded, peeling, ignored. I pulled out my phone. No rush. No shaking hands, just method. First, Proton Mail, private, encrypted, set to self-destruct. Second, the email, its subject line, root access protocol final. Inside was a single string of characters. Nonsensical to the untrained eye, 42 randomized alphanumerics wrapped in a hash-salted format I'd burned into muscle memory like a scar. That right there was the crown jewel, the key to everything: billing servers, payroll nodes, internal Git, Jenkins, size/cd, even the lock server that controlled badge entry to the HQ. Now, here's the thing: that password didn't exist anywhere else. No local copies, no sticky notes, no just-in-case USPs. It lived in that email, period. But that wasn't enough. I added a failsafe, a two-factor authentication token required to access the inbox, a physical UBI key I wore around my neck for years until I tucked it, ceremoniously, into my sock drawer the night I got canned. There was no backup admin because the company never wanted to spend on redundancy. If we trust her, we don't need more people, the CTO once said in a meeting, trying to spin a layoff into a compliment. I smiled, said thanks, took the power. They gave me God mode and assumed I'd never get angry. Amateurs. So now, with the root credential staring at me one last time, I opened a secondary tab, logged into the token manager. 2 clicks. Prompted to confirm deletion of 2FA device ID, 0 root authenticator. I pressed OK, that was the match. The fuse now burned toward midnight. That email, scheduled to self-delete on Saturday at exactly 12 o'clock a.m. Eastern, it would vanish like breath on glass. No recovery. Not by me, not by Bryce. Not even by a panicked legal team clawing through compliance logs at 3 in the morning. Once the 2FA key was gone, access was locked behind an irreversible wall of mathematical certainty. Even if they got a hold of my phone, even if they guessed the account, without the second factor, it was lights out. People think revenge is dramatic. Screaming matches, broken glass, crying in the rain. Nah, real revenge is clinical. It's silent. It's reading the manual everyone else skimmed and using it like a scalpel. I slid the phone across the table, face down, and sipped my coffee like it didn't taste like melted roofing shingles. In 12 hours, the system would still be online, humming, untouched, unaware, but in 72 it would start coughing, slowing, asking for root access it would never receive. I tipped the waitress in cash. Outside, the sun was setting over the gas station next door, painting the pumps orange like they were on fire. I stood there a minute, watching the world spin like nothing had changed. But something had. Midnight was coming, and Greystone Capital didn't even know the bomb was ticking. Monday, 8:07 a.m. Greystone's Slack lit up like a Vegas slot machine on cocaine. Anyone else locked out of billing? Why is Jenkins throwing 400 threes? Can someone check the VPN? I can't access anything. Where's Diane? Phones started ringing. Not in that polite, filtered through headset kind of way, no. Actual desk phones started buzzing like 2007 had risen from the grave to dance on their outage report. IT support's channel went full DEFCON. Ticket queue ballooned like a tick in August. The CRM was offline. Internal Git refused pushes. Finance couldn't access the payroll pipeline, which wouldn't be such a big deal if payday wasn't in 72 hours. The door locks were the real kicker. Biometric readers threw up access denied messages. Executives stood outside like tech-illiterate Sims characters, holding lattes and confusion in equal measure. Bryce, the COO himself, had to be let in manually by a night shift janitor with a keycard that still, mercifully, used a standalone reader. He burst into IT like an off-brand Gordon Ramsay in overpriced cologne, sweat already pooling in his collar. Why the hell won't anything boot? A dozen eyes flicked to him over monitors that all said some variation of the same thing. Root authentication required. Credentials missing. Access denied. Reset the damn thing, Bryce barked. A brave soul, Illy, a junior admin with 2 years experience and a mousepad that said I code under pressure, tried to explain. We can't. All elevated access requires the root credential. Bryce went red, then white. Then that pasty gray colored drywall gets right before mold sets in. Call the backup vendor. Call Microsoft. I don't care, unplug it and plug it back in. They did call Microsoft, and Oz. and a consulting firm who charged $400/hour just to read back their own documentation. But everything required one thing, a credential string that no one could produce. Meanwhile, in my little corner of nowhere, I sat on my porch swinging yesterday's hoodie, sipping good bourbon from a chipped mug that said world's okayest employee. My phone buzzed on the table with Slack notifications, emails, voicemails, all clawing at the silence I'd gifted them. I didn't check any of them. Instead, I scrolled my weather app. Sunny, 78 degrees, perfect. Back in the belly of the beast, the IT team tried everything. They tore through documentation. If you could call 2 half-filled Google Docs and a Jira comment section documentation. They tried escalation chains, password reset flows, emergency escalation requests, but every attempt looped them back to the same wall, requires root encrypted, root unreachable, and then came the whisper. Soft, from the corner. Illy again, staring at a blinking login screen, hands frozen over his keyboard. She was the only one who knew that password. Bryce looked at him like he'd farted in a church. What the hell do you mean she's gone? You mean no one has the credentials? Lee didn't answer. No one did because they all knew. And somewhere far from their sweat-soaked panic, I smiled. The system hadn't failed. It had simply followed orders. By 9:24 a.m., the building was in full meltdown mode. Email threads multiplied like wet gremlins. Executives CC'd so many names. It looked like the field had suffered a data breach of its own. The subject lines kept escalating. Urgent system outage urgent system outage urgent escalation required immediately, until someone just gave up and wrote FWD. Everything is down. Clients were locked out of their portals, dozens of them. Angry C-suite types from insurance firms and private equity outfits started blowing up account managers' phones. Legal contracts flagged non-compliance clauses. SLA breach penalties started auto-calculating. Some high-priority deal in Singapore was supposed to be finalized via secure internal signing flow, dead in the water. The system kept spitting back server timeout. Retry later. As if time could fix this. Then came the real cherry on top. Payroll failed to execute. The cron job that released funds every Monday morning didn't just misfire, it never initiated. With no root access, the shell script couldn't spin up the dependent services, and all payout instructions stalled in a pending state. No one was getting paid. Not the executives, not the interns, not the guy who cleaned Bryce's ridiculous standing desk treadmill. The audit department, already behind on quarterly compliance, missed a crucial upload deadline to the SEC. That little miss carried a 5-digit fine and a red flag they'd have to explain for months. Finance tried blaming the IT team. The IT team pointed at the access logs. The access logs said, user deleted. Timestamp, Friday 5:05 p.m. That's when legal got involved. Properly involved. They ran straight to the server logs and tried to do a recovery trace. Found nothing, then they pinged the internal email audit trail. My Greystone email, tied to every major credential tree in the architecture, had been permanently purged from the system. Timestamp of deletion? Saturday, midnight, right on schedule. Because it wasn't enough for me to leave, I had to be erased. And they walked me right to that decision. Legal compiled a report, somewhere deep in the PDF, buried between the redactions and damage assessments, was a single forwarded email from HR. Subject, offboarding initiated effective immediately sent, Friday 5:00 p.m. to redacted from Bryce at Greystone Capcom. He signed it himself. And suddenly the buck stopped. Bryce tried spinning it. She sabotaged us. This is criminal. Get her back in here. Now, but the timestamps, the emails, the purge schedule, all lined up. I hadn't touched a single system after my termination. Everything that happened because they let me go without asking a single damn question about continuity. At 10:11 a.m., my phone rang. Blocked number. I didn't answer. At 10:12, a text came through. Hey, this is from Greystone. We need your help. Can we talk? I turned the phone face down on the porch railing. Took another sip of bourbon. Watched a squirrel dig through my rose bed like it owed him money. At 10:14, a second text. Please, we're trying to fix this. I laughed. Weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to undo a consequence they created with their own soft hands and empty heads. I gave them a castle and they handed it to a toddler with a torch. By 10:20, my voicemail had 3 desperate messages. I didn't listen to any of them. Let him sweat. Monday, 11:00 a.m. Emergency board call. They patched in through WebEx because Bryce still insisted it was more enterprise grade than Zoom, as if vendor selection could offset total systemic collapse. 12 floating heads blinked into existence, all wearing the exact same expression. The tight-jawed, barely restrained corporate panic that smells like cologne and expensive lawsuits. The chairman looked like he hadn't slept. The CFO looked like she just realized her emails weren't syncing. Bryce looked like a possum who'd wandered into traffic and decided confidence was his only way out. If I identified the source of the disruption, he began, adjusting his lapel like this was a text talk and not a corporate funeral. The former infrastructure manager failed to implement adequate credential redundancy. However, I've been assured we have a full backup infrastructure to restore critical systems shortly. He paused like he expected applause. Silence. Then someone, board member #3, if you went by screen layout, leaned in. Is that true? Do we have a mirrored environment ready to deploy? Bryce didn't flinch. Absolutely. The backups are robust, mirrored twice weekly. Standard protocol. I nearly spat bourbon on my cat. Because here's the part he didn't understand, the part I'd explained in no fewer than 4 memos, 3 stand-up meetings, and 1 company-wide Slack post in 2023. The backups are encrypted. The encryption requires the root credential. The root credential was stored in exactly one place. That place is now a digital smudge on the sidewalk. Let me take you back. It was last year, April. We just survived a mild ransomware scare triggered by a sales intern clicking a fake Dropbox link titled Team Bonding Photo Zip. I used the momentum to draft a security memo titled Credential Management Risks and Redundancy Failure Points Real Page Turner. Inside, I spelled it out. Clear, simple, painfully obvious. Greystone currently stores critical infrastructure credentials in a secured, single-access, rotating encryption model. Without replication or backup of this access path, the loss or offboarding of the credential owner constitutes an irreversible operational risk. Suggested solution: establish a dual admin schema or credential escrow system tied to board-level access. Bryce replied, 4 words, not a priority now. Emails probably still sitting in legal's inbox like a forgotten landmine. Back in the meeting, the CTO finally unmuted, sweaty, twitching, clearly realizing that if the board ever read that memo, he was next. Actually, he said, voice wobbling, the backups are encrypted using the same root token that we, lost. Bryce blinked like a goldfish on cough syrup. More silence. Then the chairman said, slow and cold, so we don't have backups. No, we do. Bryce stammered, we just can't access them. Yet it was beautiful, like watching a souffle collapse in slow motion. Bryce's lie shriveled under the weight of its own emptiness. There were no workarounds, no hotfixes, no engineers with last-minute solutions. The digital fortress I'd built stood unbreached but sealed shut with the master key gone up in metaphorical smoke. And the thing is, I gave them every chance. All they had to do was listen. Invest. Ask me once what happened if I got hit by a bus. But they didn't, because they thought I was replaceable, that my knowledge was transferable, that IT stuff was just something anyone with a CompTIA cert and a whiteboard could handle. They bet on ego over competence. Now they were watching the cost accrue in real time. Somewhere in the call, Bryce started pivoting, talking about external consultants and strategic recovery initiatives. I stopped listening. The dog across the street started barking at a UPS truck, and it somehow felt more sincere. By the end of the call, they were throwing around phrases like potential litigation exposure and reputational mitigation. I closed my laptop and slid it under the porch cushion. Let them spin. They wanted a system built by a ghost, now they were stuck haunting it. Tuesday, 9:12 a.m. Courier showed up at my front gate holding a manila envelope and a clipboard like he was delivering an organ transplant. I was in the garden, knees in the dirt, pruning back a rose bush that had grown sideways, kind of like Greystone's leadership, except the rose bush had the decency to bloom. He didn't call out. Just hovered behind the fence like I was a zoo exhibit. I didn't look up. Didn't wave, just kept clipping. Eventually, he left the envelope on the mailbox and scuttled off like the job might stain his resume. Inside was a letter, printed in Arial of course, with urgent highlighted in yellow at the top. A single-page apology masquerading as professionalism. They'd like to open a conversation about recovery assistance. No blame, no legal threat, just white-collar desperation wearing aftershave. The kind of tone people adopt when their house is on fire and they suddenly remember you mentioned once, in passing, that you used to be a volunteer firefighter. I let the paper drift into the compost bin. A few hours later, voicemail. Hi, this is Greg from Greystone's executive office. We're hoping to negotiate a resolution here. We'd greatly value your expertise in recovering full system functionality. Please call us back. We're flexible. Interesting word choice. Like a bank vault begging the locksmith it laid off to come back and jiggle the hinges for a tip. I opened a blank doc and started typing. Terms, reinstatement, not as staff, not even as full-time, contractor. Independent, no meetings unless I initiate, rate, $575/hour. Minimum 40-hour retainer, non-refundable, paid in advance, bonus. Retroactive for the last 12 months of unpaid overtime and undocumented on-call coverage. $84,600, itemized, apology. Written. Signed by the board, notarized, office, private, no open floor plan, no shared space with Bryce. No NDA, I don't care if they make one. I'm not signing it, autonomy. I say when the recovery starts, I say when it ends, I kept it short. Simple, surgical. The kind of list that says, I'm not angry anymore, I'm simply expensive. Then I drafted the email. Subject, System Recovery Assistance Greystone Team, I acknowledge receipt of your inquiry regarding recovery support. I am willing to consider providing assistance under limited consulting terms. Please find my hourly rate and conditions attached. Regards, DL, no emojis, no passive aggression. No hope this finds you well. just facts, delivered like a scalpel through silk. I attached the PDF, hit send, closed the laptop. Then I went back outside and replanted the lavender. The breeze smelled like dirt and cooked grass. My dog snored on the porch. Inside some boardroom miles away, Bryce was probably yelling into a speakerphone about overreach and principles, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was setting my rate. Wednesday, 2 o'clock p.m., emergency shareholder meeting. Calendar invites had gone out at dawn under the header Strategic Operations Update, which is corporate for someone's about to get eviscerated, and we'd prefer it happen in a tasteful font. Bryce sat at the end of the conference table, flanked by Legal and Flopsweat. His tie was crooked. His voice was flat. He spoke like a man trying to deliver a eulogy while pretending it wasn't his own. We've identified the root of the issue, he began. Credentialing oversight occurred during a period of transition, and though we've made extensive recovery efforts, the proprietary nature of the former administrator's protocols has necessitated external consultation. Translation: he fired the only person who knew how anything worked, then spent 5 days Googling how to unfire someone. I waited for them to finish their corporate throat clearing before I joined the call. My name blinked into the Zoom panel. D.L. Consultant, Diane, are you there? Someone asked. I unmuted, hair tied back, no makeup. Button-down shirt, clean, sharp. I looked like someone who had nothing to prove and all the leverage in the world. Loud and clear, I said. Shall we begin? The chairman nodded. Please walk us through your understanding. I did, not with smugness, not with malice, just precision. I outlined what had happened, how the system had been built for security, how redundancy was proposed and rejected, how access protocols functioned, and what had triggered the current lockout. I used small words, I included screenshots. I didn't gloat, but I did let them feel the weight of every single ignored memo. Bryce tried to interrupt. That's not accurate. I spoke right over him. Let me finish. Silence. I clicked to the final slide. A red box, current status, locked, credentials purged. Recovery requires source-level access. Greystone is not suffering from a technical failure, I said. It is experiencing the delayed consequence of a leadership failure. The boardroom went ice cold. One of the shareholders cleared his throat. Thank you, Diane, that was clarifying. Another voice, older. Do we have a path forward? I smiled. You already do. It was attached to my consulting agreement. A few murmurs. Someone made a motion, someone else seconded. A vote was called. Hands raised. Bryce was placed on administrative leave. Effective immediately. No dramatic exit, no protest, just a quiet removal, death by competence. Then someone turned back to me. Can you unlock the system? I nodded. Certainly. I minimized the Zoom window, opened a secure shell, and typed with deliberate care. Each keystroke felt like a slow pour of gasoline over arrogance. The kind of typing that wasn't just solving a problem, it was making a point. I decrypted the emergency access token. I initiated a recovery handshake with the mainframe. The system blinked, hummed, came back to life with a soft, obedient purr. Access restored, I said. Your kingdom is breathing again, they thanked me profusely. I didn't smile, I didn't nod, I just logged out. Dominance isn't loud, it's silent, clean, and unignorable. Friday, 8:31 a.m. I walked through the front doors of Greystone Capital with a badge that now read DL. Infrastructure consultant in black sans serif, laminated like it mattered. The receptionist, a new one, fresh-faced and unaware of the blood soaked into the carpet, stood to greet me but thought better of it when I didn't stop walking. My cube was still there, empty, sterile. The cactus I left behind had been adopted by someone else, now dead and shriveled in a different pot. Fitting. I dropped my bag, logged into the terminal, and faced the beast. The hum of the server room echoed through the floor, a sound that used to vibrate in my bones. Still steady, still mine. I swiveled my chair, cracked my knuckles, and began the postmortem. The system booted without protest. 3 terminal windows sprang to life. Jenkins queued clean. Payroll queued cleaner. The door locks blinked green, one by one, like obedient little soldiers that remembered who fed them. Somewhere in the background, the new hires whispered, quiet, reverent like kids in church watching the preacher roll up her sleeves. No one asked questions. No one hovered, a few nodded nervously. I didn't return the gesture. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to clean the mess they made in my absence at 3 times the pay on my schedule with full authority and zero tolerance for bullshit. I opened my email, drafted a new one. To board at Greystone Capital.com subject. In case you need a backup attachment. Greystone Disaster Review PDF inside the file, a full report. Line-by-line failure breakdown. Names redacted but obvious, recommendations, warnings, and a final paragraph that read, this could have been prevented. It was all documented. You simply chose not to read. I hit send. Then I leaned back, exhaled slow. Let the hum of the servers remind me that I was back in control. Not because I wanted to be, but because they had no one left. My fingers tapped a final command just to check system health. Everything green. I stood up, walked to the glass wall that faced the server racks. Watched them blink. Smiled. Next time, I whispered, document your dependencies. Then I turned off the monitor, not out of anger, out of mercy. What stuck with me wasn't just the revenge, it was the restraint. She didn't destroy anything. She simply made them live inside the consequences of their own short-sighted decisions. That's not pettiness. That's precision. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.